That's not what I was looking for. I'm close. I'm very close. Let me show you what I did, and then we'll discuss what I'm going to change for the next batch. Welcome, friends. So I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole lately making pop or soda. And one of the pops that I really loved as a little kid was cream soda. And cream soda, where I grew up, was sickly sweet. You could just barely taste the vanilla as a component. And it was electric pink. Always electric pink. Although in other places it could be clear. But here it was always electric pink. And I loved it. I loved that it was sweet. I loved the color. And eventually you kind of grow out of that love because it is too sweet for me now. And it has one sort of mono flavor that eventually I just didn't like anymore. So I went out and I started searching for what other flavors could you add to the vanilla? And could I cut the sugar back? And were other people doing interesting things with something called cream soda that may not be the cream soda of my youth, but I might like a little bit better? And so I found a company that's making one that is more of an adult flavor, and they're adding coffee and chocolate or cacao. So I thought that's interesting. Let's see if we can give it a shot. I don't know what proportions to put it all in, but we're just going to play around and we're going to see what happens. So I'm going to put in just a few coffee beans and maybe 3 or 4 of these cocoa nibs. And I'm just going to gently crush them in a mortar and pestle. So I don't want the chocolate and the coffee to be the dominant flavor. I just want to kind of have it in the background and play with the vanilla. So in here I've got white sugar, just regular cane sugar. I've got 2 vanilla pods that I've scraped the seeds out of. I'm going to put the coffee and the cacao in. And the next thing to address with cream soda is it has that sort of creamy, luxurious mouthfeel. And you're not going to get that from regular sugar. So I'm going to do 2 things that I've learned from brewing beer. And this first thing I'm going to put in is lactose, and that is milk sugar. So if you're lactose intolerant, obviously leave it out. You may not need it, but I know that it brings sort of a creamy texture to your mouth, even though it has nothing to do with cream. There's no fat, it's just the sugar. And this is maltodextrin. And maltodextrin will also help with that creamy mouthfeel, but it will also help sort of keep the bubbles bubbling longer. I don't know if that makes any sense. So I've got all of that in there. Next is citric acid, and I don't want to put too much citric acid in because I don't want it to have much of a bite. But I do want to put the citric acid in order to give it longer shelf life or keep it alive in the fridge longer, keep it from spoiling. So I'm going to put about a tablespoon in. That's about 15 grams, which is less than I used in the other 2 pops that we made. But both of those were citrus-based, which could stand up to more of an acid bite. Now, I've got a liter of water here that's just come to a boil. We're going to stir this together and dissolve the sugar. So I'm just going to let this steep and cool down to room temperature before adding the vanilla extract. You don't want to put the vanilla extract in while it's still hot like this. The heat will evaporate the alcohol and you'll lose some of the flavonoids. It's better to wait for this to cool down for the next step. Okay, so we're all cooled down to room temperature. We're going to add in vanilla extract. I think I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons. And we'll see how this plays out. So I'm just going to mix this in. Okay, so I've got a little sieve, and I'm going to strain out the bits of coffee and cocoa. So pour this in. Okay, so I've almost got the flavor there. There's a couple of things working against me. One is I'm pretty sure I've got too much citric acid. So I'm going to dial that back a bit because there's too much tang. The mouthfeel is really good. I've got a nice smooth mouthfeel. So I know that the lactose and the maltodextrin are doing their job. I think though I could bump up the sweetness a little bit. It should be a little bit more sweet. But when I drop the citric acid, that sweetness may become more pronounced with the amount of sugar that I've already got in there. So I'm going to start out by dropping out the citric acid, and I'm going to take the coffee out. I'm just going to play with the vanilla and see where that gets me. And this is what recipe testing is all about. You come up with an idea, you test it, you step back, you take a look at what you did, you take a look at what the outcome was, and you try again. And as much as it's a fail, I don't think it's a failure. I think that it's not what I was looking for, but if I didn't do this step, I wouldn't get to where I need to be. So, back to the drawing board, and I'll see you in a future episode where we'll probably get this right.